Welcome back to Ben's Basics. It's been a while, but I have a big recipe for you. Something I've been fighting for 5 years to perfect. Oven barbecue brisket. Something every Texan longs for. And here are my ingredients. Since I live in an apartment alone, I'm only going to do a brisket flat, because the whole pack of brisket I won't be able to eat through it in a week or even 2 weeks. We're also going to need some kosher salt, some hickory smoked salt, some hickory smoke powder, some liquid smoke concentrate. They are two different things. Some coarse ground black pepper, brown sugar, pink curing salt or Prague powder number 1, some beef tallow, and some charcoal powder, food safe. Alright, let's get started. So first we're going to have to brine the brisket for at least 2 days prior to cooking. To make the brine, we're going to need 1 gallon of water and 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons, 3 tablespoons, 4 tablespoons of our hickory smoked salt. So we're changing the color of the light. Now we're going to need the brown sugar, 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons, 3 tablespoons, 4 tablespoons of the brown sugar. Wait a minute. 5 tablespoons of brown sugar, pardon me. Eight tablespoons of brown sugar total. Now, the biggest problem with an oven brisket that replicates Texas barbecue is to get that smoky flavor. So we're going to need some of this hickory smoke powder. The only ingredients in this hickory smoke powder is, I believe, dextrose and hickory smoke, which means it's about as pure as you can get in a hickory flavor there. And we're also going to use the whole bottle of the hickory smoke concentrate. There you go. The brine will be for about 2 days. And trust me, this is going to penetrate the meat and also flavor it with a deep smoke flavor that you can only get, well, either using this method or with a actual barbecue smoker. Alright, let's go ahead and plop this baby into the brine. Living in a 3rd floor apartment is especially hard because you can't have a smoker, can't have a grill, can't even have like an open flame in our unit because it'll break all sorts of, it'll break the lease, number 1. It'll also probably break the law. Alright, we're going to put some plastic film on top. This is actually the container I usually use for sous videing. So it has a hole in the lid, so I have to do this. I could have bought another lid, but I figured just use some plastic wrap. Alright, this is going to go in the fridge for 2 whole days. Now, let's talk about the rub. There are several very fine rubs in my area, especially from the best barbecue places in my area. We got some Goldie's, some Angelo's, and of course, Heim. But for an oven brisket, they won't work. We have to make our own. Alright, so this is going to be in parts, not exact measurements. So, Ant's Barbecue had an oven brisket recipe that was 1 part by 1 part salt to black pepper, and I've switched it to 1 part to 9 parts salt to black pepper, then an additional 1 part of the hickory smoke powder, and then the tiniest amount, like I believe that's like 1/4 of a teaspoon of the charcoal powder. This is going to help the crust set and really become a really good bark once it's finished baking. Look how quickly that stains the rub. Yeah, look at that. It looks like solid black now. Alright, now it is brisket day, but we don't pull it from the brine just yet. We got to let it brine for an initial 2 hours with an added ingredient. Our pink curing salt, or Prague powder number 1. Is Prague powder number 1 from Prague? I don't know, you tell me, listeners. Alright, we're going to do just, for the whole gallon, 1 single tablespoon of the pink curing salt. Just 1. Give it a quick stir. Then back in the fridge for 2 hours. What the curing salt will do is it will add that thin pink line on the edge of the brisket, the smoke ring as people call it. Because we're not using any actual smoke, this is all going to be with smoke powders and liquid smoke. We need to replicate that smoke ring somehow. Alright, now it is time to get the brisket ready. So we're going to pull it out of the brine. And then we're going to pat it dry. And you might notice that I have switched these liquid smoke from Stubbs to this other brand, Colgan. And the reason why is I looked at the Stubbs label closely and it didn't say it had any actual hickory smoke in it. It was just a bunch of chemicals. So I decided to use the Colgan brand because it does have like chemicals in it, but also lists hickory smoke as an ingredient, which I think is very important. So let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is we're going to cover the brisket in the liquid smoke. We're going to use this as our binder. Give it a nice good pat down. And then we're going to put down the rub. But we're going to pat the rub, we're not going to rub the rub. This is a tip I got from Ant's Barbecue. Actually, Ant's Barbecue is a source of like a lot of tips I got here. Ant's Barbecue reviewed 3 different oven brisket recipes, and he found all 3 of them lacking somehow. And I did too, so I'm basically using a little bit of my own intuition and also lots of things I've learned from living in the great state of Texas for a good portion of my life to make this new method. And there we go, we got the entire brisket nicely covered in our custom rub. Then we're going to put it in the oven. Going to slip a probe in there. We're going to cook it to 175 at an oven at 275. And now while we're waiting, we're going to prep. Next part. When the brisket reaches 175, it hits a point called the stall, where it's very hard for it to reach 200. It just takes forever to climb up. So I'm going to use a technique called the Texas crutch, where I'm going to use some brown butcher paper. But first, I'm going to make it to where the brisket kind of raises itself in its own fat, or at least beef fat. So I'm going to stuck about 2 tablespoons of the beef tallow in a ramekin, microwave it for about 30 seconds until cut nice and melted. And I'm going to basically cover where the brisket's going to rest on the butcher paper with the beef tallow. And there we go. Just a nice rectangle there. Doesn't have to be exact, but pretty much is going to have to cover the area where the brisket rests. And here we go. We have the brisket fresh out of the oven at 175. We're going to take it, put it right on the tallow, and give it a nice wrap. Now, I've never worked in a butcher shop, so I'm not sure how my wrapping skills are. I'm pretty sure they look pretty lousy to people who have worked in a butcher shop, but, well, this is the best I can do. Right, back in the oven. Gonna crank that oven up to 325 and have it go up to 203. All right. After that point, you're supposed to leave it in the oven for 4 hours at a barely on oven, which I did. And then after all this time, a good day's worth, even with only the flat, a small flat at that, your brisket is done. And look at that bark. Oh my goodness, look at that. And I can't even describe the smell. My apartment smelled like a smokehouse with all the liquid smoke and smoke powder involved. When it's baking, it just permeates. My apartment smelled like some of the best barbecue restaurants in town. The fats were dripping everywhere. Okay. Now let's see what we get here when we do a nice thin cut. Alright. Go. Yeah, the end's getting a little dry there, but oh my goodness, look at that. Look at that juice. Look at how moist that is. Oh my god. Look at that. Had to do a beauty shot. Alright, well, let's set this up like a Texas barbecue restaurant. There we go. We have 3 slices of brisket, corn, and bread.
Oh my god.
And that is my real reaction.
Nailed it.
Like, comment, and subscribe. And stay tuned for more.